Good evening. This regular meeting of the Detroit Lake City Council is called to order. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Walz, under Minnesota Statutes, Chapter 12, Emergency Management, declared a peacetime emergency on March 13th, 2020. The city has determined an in-person meeting may not be practical or prudent because of health pandemic. The City of Detroit Lakes meetings will be held via telephone conference call or by other electronic means as outlined in Minnesota Statutes 13D.021. However, tonight, the city is going to conduct our meeting as a hybrid meeting, so we'll have two options. You can either attend via Zoom or you can attend in person at the Home Center Ballroom at 806 Summit Avenue in Detroit Lakes. At this time, I'd like to invite you all to please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Without objection by the council, we have some folks from out in the Village Park Place neighborhood that would like to address the council this evening, and I'm going to call on their spokesman, John. And John, if you would go over to the podium, please. And again, we'd like to have you state your name and address for our minutes.
My name is John Termalin. We live at 1758 Park Place, 1758 Brainerd Boulevard at the Park Place condos. There's 8 condos there, and we have 4 of us represented of the 8. The other 4 were not able to make it, but they are in agreement with us of what we're going to ask for.
John, could I hold you up just 1 second? Carrie, do you want to move that microphone up closer where John can be heard a little better? Sorry, John.
That's all right. I don't talk as loud as I used to.
Yeah, and I don't think the people could hear you very good. That'll be better, yeah.
Is this better?
That's better. Yes.
Okay. Each year, we're supposed to have an agreement with the owner of the 2 lots on the east side of us and on the west side of us. And it is our understanding, and the city has been really good. We've lived here 3 years. Kathy's lived here 8 years. And each time we ask you, you've been really good about trying to get it done, and I want to thank Ron for doing that and the others who were involved with that. But it's just a very poor appearance. We feel we have a nice-looking building that holds our 8 condos and our commons room. My wife was walking a year ago, and about approximately 10 feet from her, a deer jumped up with 2 fawns and ran right across in front of her. And I know that can happen anywhere in Minnesota. We're from Montana, and we've grown up with wildlife too, but it's just not real proper. And I have seen a skunk also come out of that tall grass, and I know none of us really want to harbor too many skunks. So if we could get an agreement, and I'm sure the agreement with you is no problem, but if you could somehow follow up and have the owner of the 2 lots please mow those at least 3, maybe 4 times a year, depending on the moisture we get. If we get too many rains like we had last night, it's going to grow like wildfire. Now, they did come over last week, and Rick and Shar, help me if I'm wrong, but I think they did most of the yard on the east side of the building. On the west side, they only did approximately, I'm going to say maybe 33 to 40% of the whole lot. And, you know, it's going to help a little bit, but it's still, there's a mound there that they have missed, and each year, for whatever reason, they don't do that mound. But that's why we're here. We appreciate what you people do. We're not here to be angry or anything. We would just like that cleaned up each year, and I think that's a fair request on our part. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for John? So, John, I might have our city attorney just recap what our ordinance says about a situation like this.
Okay.
So I'm going to call on Charlie Ramstead, our city attorney, and Charlie, we probably have to have you come to the mic.
Unfortunately. All right, well, what we would probably be again, John, I'm unfamiliar with the actual look of the property. We have an ordinance a nuisance ordinance, one that specifically relates to noxious weeds or tall weeds, and then the regular general nuisance ordinance, which also references weeds. So I guess I don't know what's on the property. I mean, if it's long grass, that would be one issue, but if there is noxious weeds, then we have a weed inspector. The weed inspector is supposed to go review the property. If the property violates the ordinance, we send them a notice of violation. We send the owner a notice of violation. The owner has either 10 or 5, but depending upon the length of the weeds, has, let's just say, 5 days to make the corrections. And if the owner does not do that, then the city can go into the abatement procedure in our nuisance ordinance. But essentially what that is, and I think we're somewhat familiar with it, is the owner has an opportunity for a hearing. So typically what I recommend is when we issue a notice of violation, we also set a hearing date. So we tell the owner that they have 5 days to make the correction, and if they don't make it within that period of time, then we have scheduled a hearing for them to come to the council to explain why they have not done that. If they fail to abate the nuisance according to the order, and the council has a hearing and determines that the order was appropriate, then the city has the ability to go in and do it, and then assess the cost of doing that against the real estate taxes on the property as one option, or also basically to send a bill to the owner. So that's the typical nuisance abatement process. It's very similar to what we do with building nuisances. And, you know, we've got that process down, so there's no reason why we couldn't do it, again, depending upon the situation with the property.
So, Ron or Sean, have we ever sent them a notice that you know of?
There
Or
was
Charlie,
a-
maybe, do you
was a
recall ever
notice.
doing it?
There was a notice sent out this time, and their concern is, so they do it this time, and they didn't do it completely like they should have been, but the thing is, with all this rain, it's gonna grow long again, so now we gotta go back to Public Works, see Sean, his secretary has to send out another letter, and so between all these letters, they have to, registered letters, it just gets to be so long time between the letters and the 5 days. And sometimes it's not 5 to 7 or 8. It just gets to be this grass keeps growing, but it's habitual. This has been going on for a number of years now. And the question that we're having is whether or not they could send out just one letter at the beginning of the year and just say that this is for the entire summer. And if you don't do that, we have to have somebody come out immediately instead of wait for all the length of the letters, registered letters, and the days before they have to redo it again, because that's their frustration. It starts looking like a farm field instead of a neighborhood.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. I mean, there has to be an abatement before, or it has to be a nuisance before you can abate it. So you can't preemptively send any landowner a letter that says, we think your property is going to become a nuisance, therefore you need to abate it, and if you don't, we will. So I guess the short answer to that question, Aaron, is no, we can't do that. This is on private property. There has to be an existing nuisance before we can order it abated.
Question,
Jamie?
what about the administrative penalty provision?
The same thing is true. I mean, we can enforce the nuisance ordinance through the administrative penalties provision, but you have to have a violation. So you can't preemptively assume there's going to be a violation. I mean, once there's a violation, you can do that. I will tell you, though, that at least if the owner of the property is not a person but a corporation, you know, it's not very effective to prosecute a corporation. You can issue the administrative penalties, but the backup of prosecution is not very effective.
Bruce?
But the city can mow it and then assess to the property, correct?
Well, again, you can do that, but you have to go through the nuisance abatement process.
No, I understand that.
But yes, you can give them 5 days to correct it. You could set a hearing within a day or two after that if the council was inclined to get together to do that. And that, you know, then the landowner gets a hearing to explain why they have not followed the order, and then the council can order it abated. And once the council orders it abated, then the city can do it and assess it against the taxes.
So Charlie, you send them a letter, they have 5 days. Do they automatically get the hearing, or do we offer them the opportunity to have a hearing?
Typically, what I do in these is I will order, send them a notice of violation. Priscilla is fairly familiar with this in the building things. You send them a notice of violation. You give them a period of time in that notice to abate, and you say that if it's not abated by that time, there will be a hearing. In other words, you set the hearing at the time of the notice of violation. Obviously, if you're giving them 5 days to abate, the hearing can't be in less than 5 days, but you can have the hearing. And the downside to having the hearing, again, is that that's a special meeting. It has to be in front of the council, but you can certainly do that.
Well, if it's habitual, I guess my personal feeling is that I would be willing to call a special meeting, at least initially, to get their attention, if you will. So,
Sure.
But who has to generate the nuisance complaint? Would that have to come from one of the neighbors?
No, it doesn't have to come from one of the neighbors. I think typically it does come from one of the neighbors, but there's nothing that would say that the city's weed inspector, which I'm thinking is Sean, can't drive by a piece of property, observe that it's in violation, and initiate the matter on their own. The ordinance just says if it comes to the attention of the weed inspector. So I think typically it's from neighbor complaints, but it wouldn't have to be.
Sean, will you go out there tomorrow and let Ron or I know the situation? And then maybe we can generate a letter, and maybe if we go through the process once, we can get their attention, and maybe
Again-
they'll be a little more, maybe they'll be ready
And
to
if I
take care.
could fill you in on this last instance, we did get a phone call. We called the landowner, just to see if we could speed the process up, letting them know that, if they don't take care of it, we would send them the letter. And they did go out and mow it right away, within 3 days. And we did a re-inspect, 5 days after the phone call, and it was mowed. So I'd rather give them a phone call to try to speed that process up than sending them a letter.
What about the noxious weeds? Is there an issue with that, or is it just the length of the grass?
Of course, in a lot of the lawns that aren't maybe fertilized and taken care of real well, there is a few noxious weeds in it. And I did print off the ordinance here, just so I had it in front of me. And what I'm reading, it is 10 days. And my understanding is what we would do is send them a letter upon a complaint, certified. Once we got that back, we'd give them the 10-day period, and then we inspect it. And if it wasn't done, we would go out and mow it. With the phone call, it did speed it up.
Well, why don't you call them again tomorrow and just tell them it's, it was discussed at the council meeting, and there's a lot more concern, and we're gonna try to put a little more teeth into it, so.
Yeah, Sean, if you look at 90303, if it qualifies under the 903 code, it's 5 days. I admit that the regular nuisance ordinance says 10 days, but 903 says 5 days.
Bruce?
Well, Mayor, two things. First of all, I heard a complaint tonight, so I would do two things. Sean, I would certainly make the phone call if you can get him to respond to the call. But I heard the complaint tonight, so I think we should start the process. In the meantime, as we do with many nuisance things, Priscilla contacts the owner. In the meantime, we're establishing a nuisance complaint and process. Let's move that forward, and if you get it done by a phone call, great. If not, let's start the process tomorrow, because I heard a complaint tonight. That's what I heard.
Got that, Sean?
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
I was gonna say that, a number of those lots out in the Brainerd area were tax forfeiture lots, and many contractors bought these lots up cheaply, and with the understanding they were gonna go ahead and develop them, and some of them have been sitting out there for 3, 4, 5 years. And, we've been through this many times. And it isn't just happening in their neighborhood, it's happening throughout town. I had a neighbor 2 blocks down from me on the north side of town, came down and got me in a golf cart on Sunday, and he says, "Jump in, Zeeman, I want to show you something." So we went out to his house, the next door neighbor, same thing, a field like they have, in tall grass, and I told him you have to get a hold of Sean over at the Public Works Building, talk to Sandy and what the process is, but it's just that this process seems to take so long that all it does is irritate people. And I don't know if there's something new we can do, but it's just, and it doesn't get the job done because these contractors know the length of time they have on these things. And so like you said, it gets mowed maybe twice or three times a summer at best. And if you have a year with a lot of rain, like looks like we have right now, we haven't had much rain at Hill now, but it does grow fast. But it isn't just Brainerd area, it's throughout the entire city with these lots. And so when people buy a house with an empty lot, it's kind of buyers beware.
John, do you have anything to add or any other questions? I'm assuming you heard what we intend to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Does anybody from Park Place want to say anything else? I thought I said it, but my wife said I didn't. Kathy's lived over there for 8 years, and she said she's had to go through this 8 years each year. So we appreciate the city's tenacity on this. The last thing I'd like to say, and this comes from my wife and I, we like our police. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We appreciate that. Thanks for coming, folks. The minutes of the regular city council meeting held May 12, 2020, and the minutes from a special city council meeting held May 27, 2020 are before the council. Is there anyone on the council or anyone in the audience? I don't see anybody in the audience, but is there anybody on Zoom besides the council and staff?
Yes, we have both the representative trademarks and Relocation.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor, I have an addition to the minutes with your permission.
Yep,
Page 4, paragraph 4. This probably happened because I got cut off with my machine, but it says I listened to the proposal on the planning commission relative to that 22 units, and it says the findings of facts are subject to interpretation. And based on City Attorney Ramsted's advice, I specifically listed items 1, 2, and 4 in the findings of fact that I felt were incorrect based on how they were proceeded. And I'd like to have that added, if I could, to the minutes, please.
I heard you say it too.
Yep.
So we can add that?
If we could add that, I would then move for approval of the minutes.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes from the May 12th regular city council meeting and the May 27th special city council meeting. Discussion on the motion? And we have to do a roll call vote because part of our meeting is on Zoom, so I'll call the last name of each of the council members present, and we'll vote that way. Imholt?
Yes.
Zeeman?
Yes.
Bly?
Yes.
Josephson?
Yes.
Boki?
Yes.
Marks Erickson?
Yes.
Winner?
Yes.
Sookie? Madeline, are you there? You're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. The consent agenda is before the council, and all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there any items that council members want either removed or added to the consent agenda?
Mayor, I'd like to add something to consent agenda. It would be the transient merchant license for Ufta Tacos of Erskine, Minnesota. That's what I'd like to add.
You're adding that to the consent agenda or to the regular agenda?
Consent.
Consent, if I can.
Consent, okay. Any other items? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with that item that Dan mentioned added. So moved by Jamie, second.
Second it.
Second by Zeeman. I'll do a roll call vote again. Sookie,
Aye.
Wenner,
Aye.
Marks Erickson,
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Josephson,
Aye.
Bly,
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Imholt.
Yes.
Without objection by the council, I'd like to turn it over to Madeline to take the first two items on the Finance Committee agenda, Finance 7A and 7B. Madeline?
Item A, Tracy Brueggemann is here tonight from Brady Martz and Associates, and she would like to review the 2019 audit with us.
Okay, welcome, Tracy. Tracy, you're muted right now.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, Mayor and members of City Council, for allowing me to present via Zoom this evening. First, I'd like to thank you for hiring Brady Martz, and secondly, I'd like to thank the city staff for their assistance during our audit. On page 1 is the independent auditor's report. The city received an unmodified opinion, which is the same opinion the city received in the prior year. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city of Detroit Lakes as of December 31st, 2019, and the changes in financial position and cash flows for the year ended in accordance with the accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. On page 16 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the governmental funds. The general fund balance increased $144,000 and ended the year with a fund balance of $5,426,000. On page 23 is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for the enterprise funds. The total enterprise fund net income before capital contributions and transfers was $15,469,000. On page 99 is our report on Minnesota legal compliance, and we noted no instances of non-compliance. On page 100 is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters. We reported a material weakness because the city's internal control did not allow for management to prevent or detect or correct misstatements of the financial statements on a timely basis, resulting in 2 entries that were made during audit. On page 102 is our report on compliance for each major federal program and on internal control over compliance required by the uniform guidance. We audited 2 programs this year, the Highway Planning and Construction Program and the Capitalization Grants for Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. And in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on the major programs. Any questions?
Any questions for Tracy? And those 2 exceptions you mentioned, Tracy, we've corrected those. Is that right?
You have corrected them and implemented a procedure to address them in the future.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Any questions? Thank you for zooming in with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, have a good evening.
Yes, so Madeline, we'll need a motion for approval of
Yes.
the audited statement.
Yes, the Finance Committee did review these in a little bit more detail with Tracy, and we moved to approve the audited 2019 financial statement.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the audited 2019 financial statement for the city of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. I'll call a roll. Any further discussion? I'll call a roll call vote. Josephson?
Yes.
Boki?
Yes.
Bly?
Yes.
Marks Erickson?
Yes.
Zeeman?
Aye.
Wenner?
Aye.
Sookie?
Aye.
And Bruce stepped out, but it passes 7-0. Go ahead, Madeline.
Item B is consideration to a memo from Terry Heaton, who is with Baker Tilly regarding the police department facility bond. And I could call on Terry to do a little bit of explanation about this bond.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, a bond was authorized at the last City Council meeting to issue debt for $6,245,000 general obligation sales tax revenue bonds and to build the police station. And typically, you see me when we have a bond where we send out an offering statement and we receive bids on the day of sale, and we give you the lowest bid on that day. Because of the way this bond will be repaid with sales tax revenue and the expectation that it will probably generate more sales tax earlier hopefully earlier than we're expecting, we wanted the flexibility, or the staff did, flexibility to prepay the bonds without penalty. And the other unique feature was the ability to draw to pay for the building, but only pay interest on the portion that is drawn. And so that is not as conducive to a regular bond sale as a loan. And so for this reason, we instead did an RFP for a direct placement loan with banks. And so we sent it out to 7 banks, and we received 3 responses. And the low bid came from Midwest Bank at an interest rate of 1.5%. Internally, there was a process after we reviewed all the proposals, the 3 proposals. We met with the pricing committee, which is comprised of the mayor, the city manager, and the finance director. And based on the information and the low interest rate, low fees, the flexibility for the draw, an 8-year term, and no penalty for prepayment and monthly payments, they are recommending to the city council to award this to Midwest Bank. There is a resolution this evening that is included with the agenda materials, and it authorizes the award of the sale of the general obligation bonds for the $6,245,000 Midwest Bank, and it includes the terms that I've discussed this evening and a monthly payment schedule as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Terry? It's going to take me a while to get used to Baker Tilly. You've been addressing this council for many years under a different name, company name. So anyway, any questions for Terry? If not, Madeline, we have 2 things we have to approve under this item.
Yes, the first is consideration to a resolution awarding the sale of the general obligation sales tax revenue bond series 2020A. And I won't repeat all that. Whoever's taking notes, Gloria, or whoever can include that in there. But the finance committee reviewed this with Terry and with Heidi this afternoon, and we moved to pass that resolution.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the resolution awarding the sale of the general obligation tax revenue bond series 2020A in the amount of $6,245,000, and that would be to Midwest Bank here in Detroit Lakes. Is there a discussion on the motion?
Well, I'd just like to say that we not only got a great bid for construction of our police department, but now we have a great interest rate to go along with it. And I feel very fortunate for our taxpayers that we could get both the construction bid we did and now a very low interest rate.
Further discussion? Okay, I'll call a roll call vote. Bly?
Yes.
Zeeman?
Yes.
Josephson?
Yes.
Imholt?
Yes.
Mark Erickson?
Yes.
Boki?
Aye.
Sookie?
Yes.
Wenner?
Yes.
The motion carries. Madeline?
The second part of that is consideration to approving a disbursement agreement with Midwest Bank related to the 2020A bonds. I don't know, when we reviewed it this afternoon, Heidi informed us that this is a general disbursement agreement that lays out the terms and and everything that goes along with that. So the Finance Committee reviewed that, and we moved to approve that disbursement agreement with Midwest Bank.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the disbursement agreement with Midwest Bank related to the 2020 A bonds. Discussion? I'll call a roll call vote. Mark Erickson?
Aye.
Sookie?
Aye.
Winner?
Aye.
Josephson?
Aye.
Bly?
Aye.
Boki?
Aye.
Imholt?
Yes,
Zeeman?
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you, Madeline. We'll go,
Mayor, before we move on, you know, Heidi gave us some good information on our sales tax collections.
okay?
And if she could maybe say a few words about that, but with COVID and everything else, I was expecting that our sales tax numbers would be down, but really it was pretty surprising, and maybe Heidi can kind of fill us in on some of that.
That would be the regular sales tax for the police department.
Police department, yes.
Right?
Sure, yep, the local option sales tax. And actually, I just received a report from the state showing the actual March figures, so I do have that report updated and was just about to hit send, and then my computer died. So I will get that out to you guys, but the actual report itself is looking like, so we don't have actual April figures yet, so we can't include that, but so far it's looking like our local option sales tax hasn't taken that huge of a hit from the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see in this report that's shown on the screen, this report showed just the estimated payments for both March and April and don't show actual figures. The actual figures that ended up coming in for the local option sales tax did end up adding quite a bit to that report. So I think overall we're still looking really great. We are only paying interest on these bonds for some time, and then we do start paying principal next year. So I think we're in a good position to move forward financing these bonds that we just sold.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump back to where we left off with the regular agenda, and I'm going to adjourn the regular meeting and call to order a public hearing to receive public comments in the matter of proposed vacation of a utility easement located at Lot 21 and Lot 22, Block 1, Longbridge Heights Addition, which is 1242 and 1246 Bay Ridge Drive. Larry, are you with us? You're muted. There you go.
I pushed the button twice. Yes, I'm here. This is a request to vacate a 15-foot wide utility easement at the north end of lots 21 and 22, Block 1 of Longbridge Heights. This has been reviewed by staff and by Public Utilities, and we recommend approval of the vacation.
Okay. I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the vacation of those utility easements, or that utility easement.
I so moved.
Second by Dan?
Yes.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. I didn't open it up for any comments because there's nobody here, so was there any written comments or anything, Glory? Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. I'll do a roll call vote. Mark Erickson?
Aye.
Wenner?
Aye.
Sookie?
Aye.
Imholt?
aye.
Zeeman?
Aye.
Bly?
Aye.
Josephson?
Aye.
Boki?
Aye.
The motion carries. I think we're down, I believe we're down to the Community Development Committee agenda, and I will turn it over to Alderman Wenner.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yesterday, the Community Development Committee met and considered several items here. Item A is second reading and adoption of Ordinance 464, rezoning from I-1 light industrial to RM multifamily residential at 1473 Legion Road. The Community Development Committee reviewed this, recommended approval, and I so move.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt Ordinance 464, which rezones 1473 Legion Road from I-1 light industrial to RM multifamily residential. Discussion on the motion? I'll call a roll call vote. Zeeman.
Aye.
Imholt.
Yes.
Josephson.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Sookie.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Winner.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
The motion passes and ordinance 464 is adopted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item B is a resolution to approve a variance to allow construction of a storage shed in the front yard with a 5-foot side yard setback and a setback of 132 feet from the ordinary high water mark at 2214 Wilderness Trail. Community Development Committee reviewed this. The Planning Commission reviewed this. Recommend approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a variance to construct a storage shed at 2214 Wilderness Trail. Discussion on the motion?
I have a question. You
Go
know,
ahead, Jamie.
I just caught that this was in the front yard, and I know that that's a little different, but do we generally allow that in the front yard?
Larry?
No, that's why they needed a variance, because they were putting it in a location where you usually don't see a storage shed. But because of the way the homes were constructed there, they don't have much room between the house and the street to put a storage building, which is where it would normally be on a lake property.
Larry, just to be clear though, when you talk about the variance from the front yard, you're referring to the front yard of the lake, correct?
Correct, the front yard being the lakeside in this case.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Further questions? We have a motion and a second to approve on the table. I'll do a roll call vote. Boki.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Imholt.
Yes.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Winner.
Aye.
Sookie.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Item C is a resolution approving a conditional use permit to allow a 9-unit storage condominium in a B3 auto-oriented business district at 1854 Nottaway Drive. Community Development Committee reviewed this, Planning Commission reviewed this, both recommend approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a conditional use permit to allow a 9-unit storage condominium in a B3 auto-oriented business district at 1854 Nottaway Drive. Discussion on the motion? We'll do the roll call vote again. Boki.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Winner.
Aye.
Sookie.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Imholt.
Abstain.
That's right. Sorry, Bruce. Bruce abstains. But the motion
Your
carries.
Honor, that's all we have to bring before the council tonight. There's a couple of other issues that we asked staff to look into, but we don't have anything for the council tonight, so.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So
Yep.
we'll move now to the Public Works Committee, and I'll call on Alderman Imholt.
Thank you, Your Honor. The item A is discussion regarding food trucks on city property. This was in response to a request from our special meeting that we had. To clarify, the Public Works Committee is not recommending a change in the ordinance where food trucks are not allowed to sell on public property. However, if they're part of a special event, so if a nonprofit such as the Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, JC's, or any nonprofit is putting on a special event, they are allowed to contract with food trucks and be able to use public property. So if it's part of a special event, certainly then the organizer would come to the city and apply for that special event permit and allowed to have food trucks.
So they still have to get the permit though, right, Bruce? Or does the organization have to get the permit?
The nonprofit has to get the permit.
Okay.
Permit, correct.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other questions on that. That was just in response to a request.
Any questions by the council?
So
Okay.
like an outside food truck could come in and doesn't have to get a license or anything because they go under the special permit?
Not if, correct, not if they're part of a special event. If they normally are just going to sell, they would need a transient merchant license. But if they come in as like you think of the Arts and Crafts Festival that would have happened this last weekend, the Chamber ran that. They have all kinds of vendors that come in that do not need a transient merchant license. Gloria, that's correct. Am I saying that correct?
typically the organization does charge a fee for them to come in, so that fee would go to the chamber, for example.
Okay, and we do take care as far as collecting the state fees and so forth for like the food and beverage and also for whatever other taxes that might be then too?
We have shared with organizations that, the 1% food and beverage tax is required, plus any transient merchant license that we do issue, we do state, part of their agreement is that they collect the 1% food and beverage tax.
Okay, thank you.
But Ron, thanks for bringing that up, because I did mean to mention that. And Heidi, hopefully, we are doing some random audits of that, because we do want to check some of these transient merchants to make sure they are paying that. Not everybody we have to check, but occasionally we should be auditing those.
So I know we do that, Bruce, but in a case like this where, let's say the J.C.'s pull the permit, would those transient merchants show up on our list where we would know who these people are?
I believe anyone who has to report to the state, their business name would show up along with the amount that they submitted. So I would
But you're checking that back with our list that we compile by looking at who pulled a permit.
Correct. And
If-
we're only able to obtain that data from the state once a year. So that's kind of the unfortunate, we can't check it continuously. There's kind of a once a year audit, so to speak, that we can do on those and contact anyone who hasn't been remitting the appropriate tax.
So Bruce, my point is that we don't know who these vendors are at the end of the year. And maybe I'm making a big deal at a piddly amount of money, but
If you're a vendor at one of these street fairs, they require you to be, be insured. They need to submit a ST3 to the Chamber of Commerce in the state of the street fair, so that the Chamber of Commerce knows that you are going to be submitting your sales tax, and at that point, nobody is sitting down in your office going, you need to submit your sales tax. It's the IRS or the Department of Revenue that's going to come after you, whether or not you're paying your city taxes or state taxes for the stuff you're selling within our municipality. So there are systems in place for these vendors.
Bruce?
Okay, item B is update on the Heartland Trail. For the council information, public information, two things are happening this summer. They did start what we call the Acorn Lake piece, which is just the retaining wall and trail along Acorn Lake, which if most people know, that's just west of Frazee. That's a separate project. They did start that last fall, and now they're going to recontinue here starting June 15th. And they have until September 1st to get that piece of the trail done under DNR supervision, and MnDOT has some involvement with that also. And then the other piece from the Detroit Lakes Tunnel, which many of us remember has been 12 years ago or so now that they actually put the tunnel in. They're going to build the trail from the tunnel to Acorn Lake, and that construction hopefully will start July 15th is what we heard, and must be completed by November 1st. So if you go along there, hopefully you'll see construction on the Heartland Trail starting this year, or most of it completed this year. And then the last piece from Acorn Lake into Frazee, we still need to get bonding dollars. If there's a bonding bill that happens, we need to get bonding dollars to complete that.
Thank you, Bruce.
Item C is consideration of resolution to accept the bids for Washington Avenue South and utility improvements and award the contract to C&L Excavating. Before I make a motion on this, I believe we can pull up the bid on the screen. It was all also emailed out to all council members, but can we pull it up also?
Say, Bruce or John, you want to clarify, do you want me to pull up the bid abstract, or do you want me to pull up the assessment worksheet?
Would have been the preliminary project costs and assessment summary that we saw yesterday that I believe Johnny emailed that out, or Kerry emailed it out.
Correct. Yep, correct.
There we go. I guess what I'd like to have our city engineer, John Pratt, just explain a little bit, not all the details of the numbers, John, is just much probably the discussion about what happened with the county in terms of that 200,000 and then the roundabout, and then I'll make the motion.
Kelsey, can you make that screen bigger? Go full screen or something? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll try to not jump into the weeds too much here. There's obviously a lot of numbers, but we did receive bids. We took 2 bids, one from CNL Excavating, one from Sleem Brothers actually a couple of weeks ago. The low bid was from CNL Excavating in the amount of $3.4 million, which was about 14% higher than what we were anticipating. Not horrible, but definitely higher than what I was hoping for. Number of reasons for that I think are justified, but I won't get into that. The good news is we're still sitting pretty close to the original budget that we had projected back in January when we sort of finalized the project scope. We're very, very close to that number, which is good news. So we're still looking at about a $4.3 million project with soft costs and other things, permitting, contingencies, things like that. So to strip this down just a little bit, talking specifically about Washington Avenue. Washington Avenue itself, between the street, the sidewalk, stormwater, streetscapes, and street lighting, so the core part of Washington Avenue, we're looking at a cost of about just a little over $3 million. We went to the county finance committee meeting and also to the county board meeting, and there were a number of council members there to discuss sort of the finalization of some of the project cost participation and how some of this stuff was going to get delved out between the two agencies. To remind the council, we got a $1 million local road improvement program grant that we partnered with the county on and pursued several years ago. And ultimately, we got $1 million. That grant is technically in the name of Becker County, but nevertheless, there's $1 million there. We entered a discussion with the county about how that was going to get applied. I think it was always understood that at least a portion of this grant would go towards the increased costs associated with concrete paving, which was right around $550,000. So that begged the question of, okay, there's $450,000 left. Do we as a city get a portion of that to put towards some of our costs, most specifically the streetscaping? We have about $600,000 tied up into streetscaping. About $200,000 of that is trees, tree guards, grates, irrigation, and some other items, and about $400,000 in colored and stamped concrete, decorative items like that. Long story longer, the county ultimately agreed to give the city $200,000 of that grant to go towards streetscaping, less $14,000, which is the cost of the county's share on the North Shore Drive roundabout. So in other words, we calculated the increased cost of the North Shore Drive roundabout to be about $21,000 per our cooperative agreement. We each pay a third of that. The county having 2 legs, we have 1. So the county had $14,000 in additional costs associated with that roundabout. The commissioners did not want to pay for that, or at least the majority of them. And so they deducted $14,000 from the $200,000.
John, I just interrupt you real quick. I just a semantic thing for Lori in the minutes. I don't want it reflect that they gave us the money. I'd say they shared the funds with us, please.
Fair point.
Thank you.
So in the end, they shared $186,000 with us towards the streetscaping. There's certainly debate surrounding whether that's enough or not. I think staff felt like we were satisfied that we got something that's $186,000 that we can put towards streetscaping costs that we didn't otherwise have, and that will ultimately bring down the city costs and be reflected in special assessments. So long way of saying that we are going to see a reduction in the special assessments as a result of that. In addition to the costs that I just talked about, and I'm not going to go into the rest of this in too much detail, we do have about another $1.3 million in costs associated with sewer and water utilities, some adjacent street work on North Shore Drive, Willow, Forest, the alley, things like that. So bottom line is the assessment should be below what we were projecting at the time of the hearing. And we should move ahead with the project. The county has
concurred with this and recommended we award the project. And so we're ready to move ahead. The last comment I'll make on this is we are still working on developing some sort of entrance gateway feature. We discussed last month, we've engaged a landscape architect to come up with some concepts for enhancements around the North Shore Drive intersection. We've created an ad hoc committee of the Public Works group that'll look at that and ultimately bring back some recommendations to the council. And any cost associated with that is not reflected in the figures that I've got right now.
So John, just to clarify, where did our numbers go? So if you look at the 1.6 that you have for the county right now,
Yes.
with the revamped numbers, that would go to basically 1.8, and then the city share where we're having the assessments would go down by 186,000 if we approve this motion tonight. Would that be correct?
That's correct. The city share and the assessable share collectively will go down by $186,000.
And just for council members' note, there is quite a bit of accessible city property that would be reduced also when we do this.
That is a fair point. We have a bunch of city property that is assessed just like any other property, so.
All right. So,
Questions?
Your Honor, we can certainly have discussion, but I'd like to get the motion on the table. And John referenced the roundabout. So my motion includes that we accept the bids for the Washington Avenue South and utility improvements and award the contract to CLL Excavating in the amount of the $3,429,545.75, and that includes the construction of a roundabout at North Shore Drive. And I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Your Honor, just to clarify on the roundabout, we had a discussion at Public Works on the roundabout at North Shore Drive, and so even though the county was not willing to participate in that cost, the Public Works Committee felt that with all the discussion we had on that, that we still wanted to recommend that to the council, and that's why it's in the motion.
And also, Bruce, you intend to abstain from voting, correct?
No,
I thought you were abstaining on this one.
no, that was that development one.
Okay. My mistake, sorry. Further discussion?
I've got a question. With the roundabout going down there where it is off the North Shore, how much land will it cut out of the city park? Will it take much of the city park there for that, on that intersection?
No, Ron, specifically for the roundabout, really no significant impact at all. In fact, I'd have to look at this, and so don't hang on this, but I think it would actually maybe less than what's there.
Okay, because I had a person that asked me if that would take into
The roundabout, no. The back-end diagonal parking that's included in the project, that does bite into the city park. And then that number I just don't have it with me. I think it impacted city park about 14 feet.
14 feet into the park?
14 feet into the park from the back of the existing sidewalk on the east side, south of North Shore Drive. I think it bit in there about 14 feet. That was
And go for about how long then?
essentially from North Shore Drive down to about where the crosswalk is, just to the north of the pavilion.
Okay.
Yep, it bites in there a little bit.
Thank you.
Further questions? Motion and second is on the table. Roll call vote. Boki?
Aye.
Josephson?
Aye.
Marks Erickson?
Aye.
Bly?
Aye.
Sookie?
Aye.
Wenner?
Aye.
Imholt?
Aye.
Zeeman?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Your Honor, just a follow-up to that, city engineer referenced it, but I was going to make a comment on the entryway, the park entryway under the leadership of Councilman Boki. He's been pushing us to look at that, and there were some proposals that we saw briefly at Public Works, but we didn't feel like they're been vetted enough to show the full council. Both Councilperson Boki and Natalie Bly stepped up, and they're going to be part of a subcommittee to take a look at that. We need to move fairly fast on that. So when you were mentioned earlier about a special city council meeting, we may be requesting one later this month or the first week of July to try to move that piece along, because if we are going to do something there, we need to fit it in with the overall construction project.
Yeah, we can do that. And you
right.
guys are gonna get on that right away, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item D is consideration of resolution to accept the bids for Long Pines Estate Phase 2 street and utility improvements and award the bid to Felt Plumbing. And if the number's not up there, then I will find it. And the bid was $535,807.62. Public Works recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution accepting the bids for Long Pine Estates Phase 2 street and utility improvements and award the contract to Felt Plumbing. Discussion on the motion? I'll take a roll call vote. Zeeman.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Imholt.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Winner.
Aye.
Sookie.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Your Honor, item D is awarding a construction contract to Felt Plumbing for some sewer sanitary relocation at 1414 East Shore Drive. The bid came in, the low bid from Felt Plumbing was $36,704.50. Public Works Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to award a construction contract to Felt Plumbing for the sanitary sewer relocation at 1414 East Shore Drive. And just a note there that the landowner is paying for that. Discussion on the motion? Roll call vote. Sookie.
Aye.
Imholt.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Winner.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item F is consideration of setting a public hearing for the first reading of Ordinance 463, amending city code section related to boat lifts and boat slips. And we would like to set that public hearing for July 14th, 2020, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to set a public hearing to give first reading of Ordinance 463, amending the city code regarding boat lifts and boat slips regulated. on
Your Honor,
July.
all we're looking to do there is clarify a couple of issues to make sure that there's no misunderstanding going into the future.
Okay. And we had a second on that? We did, okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion?
I know this is involving boat lifts and boat slips, but was this a part of the J&K as far as their footage about having a survey done? Was this gonna be part of this? Is this a separate thing?
We talked about, with City Attorney Ramsden, about having a survey, but that was not part of the motion.
That was not part of that motion here then? Will that be up tonight then, later, or didn't make the cut for the survey?
Maybe Charlie could address that.
I'll have some other information for us to present for next month on that. So I'm not sure we're going to need a survey. So I did some additional research on it today, and we'll discuss that.
But that matter will come back to the council next month,
Sure.
the one that Ron's
It'll be
referring
fine.
to. Okay.
That'll come back and it won't be needed for a July 4th event or anything like that
No.
then? Okay, very good, thank you.
Further discussion? We have a motion to set a public hearing for the first reading of Ordinance 463. I'll call roll call vote. Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Imholt.
Yes?
Sookie.
Aye.
Renner.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Item G, Your Honor, is a consideration entering a contract with MnDOT for Phase 1 archaeological investigation in connection with the Westlake Drive project. Public Works recommends we approve the contract, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to enter into a contract with MnDOT for a Phase 1 archaeological investigation in connection with the Westlake Drive project from Legion Road to County Road number 6. Discussion on the motion? A roll call vote. Josephson.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Imholt.
Yes?
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Sookie.
Aye.
Winner.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Your Honor, the city engineer's report, monthly project status report for the next few months, we'd like to have as part of our regular agenda, so I'd ask City Engineer John Pratt to give us an update on the project list as noted in your packet.
John?
But Mayor and Council, I'll try to skip through some of these that maybe there isn't any comment on, but had a fair amount of construction starting to ramp up over the last month, so we've got some things to report on. Randolph Road, Chris Street to County Road 54, this is a project we started last year, got the base course down and got it substantially complete. Over the last few weeks, the contractor has been doing some additional work out there. They got the the wear course paving rather, completed last week, so we're kind of into the final stage of getting some pavement markings down, turf work, cleanup, things like that. So that should be wrapped up here over the next week or so, in advance of the next piece of this project, which is the signal improvements at Highway 10 and 54 and Highway 10 and Chris Street. We have MnDOT has bid that, awarded that contract to Celine Brothers of Hawley. We have a pre-con later this week on that, and construction's anticipated to start on that project right after the 4th of July weekend, early to mid-July there. The plan is to start the work on the signal at 54 and get that complete first. If everything goes to plan, then they would move to the Chris Street portion of it next. So there will be some activity. Highway 10 will remain open, may be some lane closures, things like that, but there'll be some activity out there pretty shortly.
John, can I ask you a question?
Certainly, Mayor.
Will you explain to us again how the Chris Street intersection will work when it's redone?
Much better than it does now.
We certainly hope that's true.
No, the improvements in a nutshell, that's a complex signal system right now with signals both on Randolph Road and out on Highway 10, and that's all interconnected with the rail crossing. The simplification comes in where the Highway 10 and Chris Street intersection will be changed to a 3/4 intersection, so you will not be able to take a eastbound left from Chris Street onto Highway 10. People wanting to go eastbound on 10 from that area, we're going to be sort of forced to go down to County Road 54 and use that signal down there.
But either direction on the highway, you can go into Chris
You
Street.
can come into Chris from either direction, and you can go westbound out of Chris.
Okay, I got
So
it, thank you.
by doing that, we then can remove the signals on Randolph Road as well, and that'll become effectively a two-way stop on Randolph.
Sure.
So it's simplified dramatically. Highway 10 will remain green 98% of the time, except before and after a train, effectively.
Okey doke, thanks, John.
Moving on, another piece to this that I want to mention, tying on to Bruce's update with the Heartland Trail. It's not part of the Heartland Trail, but the county also received a grant, again with assistance and support from the city, to construct a trail from the box culvert into County Road 54. And so that's sort of baked into this cake as well. The county will be working on trying to get that constructed sometime this year while they have the grant fund yet. So be a little bit more trail work. Moving on, Westlake Drive, Legion to County Road 6. I do have a couple of comments there. We approved the archaeological study tonight, so that'll get going. That's a piece to the puzzle that we need to get complete to move this project ahead next year. The county's still working on the quiet title process relative to the dispute over the right-of-way. On a related note, and I think it's important the council know this, we had sent out a property owner update letter to those folks. We wanted to have a public meeting. We couldn't do that. We sent them a letter. One of the things in that letter was informing them that we intended, or utility companies intended, to relocate their utilities this year in advance of the project. That was one of the silver linings of delaying the project, is cable, phone, electrical, gas could get in there now, get that stuff moved, get it replaced. It's some old utilities. Long story short, we've got notice from some of the property owners' attorney, through their attorney, that they were objecting to that, given the dispute over the right-of-way. We responded and effectively asked if they'd be willing to give the easement until the dispute is settled. The answer, in short, was no. The unfortunate part with that we pointed out to them is we're going to be in a situation very likely where we'll have to do the utility relocations in concert with the street project, which ultimately is going to add timeline to that construction schedule. It will add access interruptions and things like that. So just another wrinkle that we'll have to work through as we move on with that project. Project number 5, West Avenue and Willow Street. There has been work on that. The contractor did get some grading and paving complete that was incomplete last year, wanted to get done. So everything's got a base course on it. They've finished the sidewalk, the curb, the gutter, all the concrete work is done. They've done some seeding. So they're kind of getting into some of the final stages of that. And we have the final paving that's going to start later this week. So I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks that project is fully complete.
John, are you going to put the final wear layer on the section north of Holmes this year on West Avenue?
Yes, we will. We will. That subgrade got to settle out over the winter, so we can put both courses on right away. Moving on, nothing to mention with the Berquist subdivision. Haven't heard anything on that recently. South Washington Avenue, I think we've talked about that enough this evening. Construction likely starting around mid-July on that project and taking most of the duration of the rest of the construction season. Had some activity on Project 8, which is South Shore Park parking lot and the multi-use trail through the city park. That multi-use trail is just about done. A few final touches there. And we'll have that finished up probably within the next week or two. And the contractor is going to be starting work on the South Shore Park parking lot and other amenities out there later this week, perhaps. The shelter itself is moving on. That's more in Sean's wheelhouse, but the shelter is going up. So there's some activity at the new park out there.
So what all do we get this year out there? The shelter?
The shelter's going in. We'll build the parking lot, be graded and paved. And we're going to grade out the area for the playground and get that site prep work done. We're also going to prep and grade the area for the sport court, which would be, I think, pickleball, and it's kind of a multi-purpose court, if I'm not mistaken. And then we also have a trail that sort of extends through the park and into the Lake Forest subdivision.
Yep.
Project 9, Long Pine Estates, I think we've talked enough about that. I would expect to see some activity out there probably in the next month. Bristlin subdivision, I haven't heard any more from that developer as of lately. I think they've hit the brakes on that for just a little bit. And then the project for next year, Willow Homes and Frazee Street, we're still doing some behind-the-scenes stuff there and probably have some more information on that project in the coming months.
Any questions for John? Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'm glad Sean knows how important that social.
One final question, Bruce, I'm sorry. When are you going to put the final layer on Willow?
Probably, they're going to start that process, maybe not on Willow. They wanted to start on West later this week, so if all goes
Right after that?
next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bruce?
Well, I was just going to say, Mayor, I'm glad that John's related to Sean King, how important that South Shore project is, South Shore Park project.
Mayor?
Yeah, Kelsey?
You know, I was gonna hold off till the end of the meeting, and I know Larry, he's just watching right now. I don't know if you can move him over to presenter, Carrie, but we did get some good news today. We actually should let Larry do this since he wrote the grant application, but we did get notified from the DNR on a $190,000 grant for South Shore Park for the playground equipment. So,
Yay.
Excellent.
Yay.
Way to go, Larry.
Thank you.
So Sean, what does that get us? One swing set?
Maybe two.
Two, okay. No, that is good news. Thank you, Larry. Thank you.
it is a 50-50 grant, so we got to come up with our portion of it too, so there might be a fundraising component to that too, but something to work on now that we know what the budget and what the revenue source is going to be from the grant.
Okay.
Your Honor, our Public Works Director, Sean King, I've asked him to give it's not on the agenda, but I've asked him to give an update regarding the opening of the parks and kind of what's available now to the public and just kind of get the word out there, Sean, so people know what's going on.
Yes, we have, Mayor and Council, we have started to open up, the city bathhouse is open along with the public restrooms, the drinking fountains. We're trying to open up as many of the parks as we can. We think it's important for people to get outside. We have started to open up, we opened up Washington Park. There is a group of youth baseball that, with the social distancing and within the limitations that they're using that, and there has been a group that has approached us and would like us to open up Snappy for the same reason. And the biggest thing is we're trying to accommodate as many people as possible. We're opening up things as we can.
And Sean, without getting into specifics of what's happening at the DNR, you might want to just mention too that we are going to put that big fishing dock that normally goes in down by the Legion, so the public knows about that.
Correct. The fishing dock is DNR dock. Of course, with them being off with the COVID-19, we have looked at options of moving the dock over. How that has worked in the past, DNR has moved it over, we put it in place and get it set up for them. We're looking at a cost to move that over there and put it in place this year, knowing with the DNR is not working right now.
Thank you, Sean.
That's all we have on the agenda, Your Honor.
Thank you, Bruce. Alderman Sookie, I think we're down to item 7C.
We are. Consideration to approval of Detroit Mountain Recreation Area's 2020-2021 budget. The Finance Committee reviewed that budget today and we move to approve it.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the Detroit Mountain Recreation Area 2020-2021 budget. Discussion on the motion? Roll call vote. Imholt.
Yes.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Wenner.
Aye.
Sookie.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Item D is consideration to accepting the American Legion Campground Annual Independent Accountants Report on agreed upon procedures for year ending December 31st, 2019. The Finance Committee had quite a lengthy discussion this afternoon about this, and we move to accept that annual independent accountants report.
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the American Legion Campground Annual Independent Accountants Report on agreed upon procedures for year ending December 31st, 2019. Discussion on the motion. Roll call vote. All in favor say aye. Sookie.
Aye.
Wenner.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Imholt.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Item E is consideration to a resolution authorizing the finance officer to make electronic funds and wire transfers as necessary to conduct the city's business. This is a typical state requirement to allow our new finance officer to make those transfers. And the Finance Committee moves to accept that resolution authorizing that.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing the finance officer to make electronic funds and wire transfers as necessary to conduct the city's business. Discussion on the motion? Roll call vote. Sookie.
Aye.
Wenner.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Imholt.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Bulkey.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Who seconded that?
I think
did.
Matt did.
I did.
Thank you.
That is all for
That's all we
Finance
got?
Committee.
Thank you,
That's
Matt.
all.
So we'll go to the Public Safety Committee and we'll call on Vice Mayor Zeeman.
Okay, I'd like to start by saying that we're fortunate to have a great police department. And as chairman of the Public Safety Committee, I'd like to say a few words about our police department. Public safety is the number one and most important goal of any city, including Detroit Lakes. Not only have we had the COVID-19 virus to deal with these past few months, we also have had protests and riots across our country over the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis because of a chokehold by a police officer. George Floyd's funeral service was held today in Houston, Texas. Here in Detroit Lakes, we realize the risk that all of our officers take each and every day to keep Detroit Lakes a safe place to live, work, and do business. We have safe streets, we have safe neighborhoods, we have safe schools, safe public places, including our parks and also public buildings, all because we have a great police force and staff here in Detroit Lakes that cares about its citizens that they all serve. We as citizens of Detroit Lakes need to give our police officers the honor and respect that they deserve for protecting all of us. We sometimes take their work for granted, but we shouldn't, because they risk their lives each and every day for all of us. All of our officers have families themselves, spouses and children. You can imagine the stress with today's environment with policemen for these families. As I said, our officers are here to protect and serve you and me. Here in Detroit Lakes, we do have a great law enforcement. The need to feel safe each and every day is the goal of our city of Detroit Lakes. Mayor Brink, our city council, and our entire city staff are all proud of the work that our officers do for all of us on a regular basis. When you see an officer, thank them for the work that they do for all of us. Let our officers know that the work as a police officer matters to each and every one of us. Thanks again for all the work that you do. I also want to say thank you to the Becker County Sheriff's Department, for the Minnesota Highway Patrol, and neighboring town police departments that helped us with mutual aids as we needed for any emergency, especially including 2 Sundays ago to help protect us when we had a protest in the Veterans Park that turned out to be peaceful. But we certainly deserve giving our police officers the respect that they certainly do deserve, and I hope that you'll tell them that when you do see them. Let's move on to our first item here. The first item, item A, is consideration to setting a public hearing for the first reading of ordinance number 465, amending City Code Section 602 for massage parlors for a June 14th, 2020 hearing. Kelsey, do you want to update us on this?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this was an item we were working on pre-COVID. We were actually getting ready to send out the ordinance and a public hearing notice, and we basically pulled the plug on that because of our inability to meet in person. So the idea is now that we're doing the kind of the joint type meetings, we can go ahead and have the public hearing and send out those notices and the draft of the ordinance to those business owners.
I understand that we have 11 businesses that will be notified, but the committee recommends, and I so move.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to set a public hearing for July 14th, 2020 regarding the first reading of ordinance 465 in regard to massage parlors. Discussion on the motion?
Mayor,
Bruce?
just to clarify, so if there's someone out there that wants to comment on this, not only at the public hearing, but they're also welcome to come to the public safety meeting on July 13th, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that meeting's at 4:30, right, Ron? 4:30 you meet?
Well, we were meeting at 4 now.
4?
Yes.
4 o'clock on the 13th is the committee meeting, and then 5 p.m. on the 14th is the city council meeting. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Josephson?
Aye.
Boki?
Aye.
Marks Erickson?
Aye.
Winter?
Aye.
Sookie?
Aye.
Imholt?
Aye.
Zeeman?
Aye.
Bly?
Aye.
Motion carries. Anything else, Ron?
Yes, is Chief Ryan Swanson on tonight? They're both on. Chief Ryan, do you want to give us an update? And you've got a special open house coming up here on June 15th, and tell us about that.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. So next Monday, June, what is it, the 15th, from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, majority of the fire departments in Becker County will be doing an open house trying to recruit membership throughout the county, as not only in Detroit Lakes, but also in, the neighboring town, excuse me, the neighboring towns. Memberships have been declining, and we're trying to do a joint effort, trying to hit the blast the media, stuff like that, and get the word out. So if anybody is interested in joining a fire department, Detroit Lakes, Frazee, Audubon, so on and so forth throughout the county, the participating fire departments will be open from 6 to 8. Members will be there, applications, all that type of stuff. So if you know anybody interested, like I told Kelsey with our new rules, he can now join because he's in the loop now. So we will be taking applications and trying to get that membership back up to where it really needs to be.
So Chief Swanson, it's June 15th, 6 PM to 8 PM.
That's correct.
And the open house, are they all at the individual fire stations, or are they all going to be centralized in Detroit Lakes?
No, so they'll all be at the individual fire departments for the participating cities that are participating in it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Ron?
Okay, anything else you want to say as far as how your last couple of months have gone, or as far as calls and so forth?
The last couple months have been going pretty good. As obviously we are, down on some members, but, we got a good, this community is a great community. We got a good bunch of guys. They put their heart and their soul into doing the public service for the community. One of the, Justin Wagamies is one of the members, was going through and doing the logged hours for 2018 and 2017. And on average, the Detroit Lakes Fire Department logs around 4,000 hours a year. So I mean, that's not individually, that's for every member combined. So I mean, it's, at the end of the day, there is, quite a need for service. So it's really good that we do have these individuals that are helping out. As we were sitting at the fire hall the other night for the protest, I just ran the numbers for May. In May, we had 220 combined hours for training. We had 21 fire calls, 4 of those, which were a no credit call, which means we did not take a truck out of the station. We were paged though. So out of those calls, we had 319.52 hours totaling for the month. So some months are just like everything are a little bit busier than others, but I just want to express that we have really good volunteers in this community, and we have a good community. So, we're all proud of that. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. And at this time, I'll call on Police Chief Todd to give us an update on what's been going on over at the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Zeeman. Obviously, our attention over the past couple of weeks has been dealing with the regional and national issues of civil unrest. And we did have a demonstration here in Detroit Lakes on Sunday, and we're thankful that the event was a peaceful event. There were no arrests made. I got an AED beeping in my closet at me right when I started talking, so I'm sorry, I was distracted. No arrests made, no citations were issued. There was no incidents of violence or anything. I want to say I appreciate Chief Swanson's staff for standing by. We worked hand in hand with the Sheriff's Office, and Sheriff Blander and his troops were excellent, and I'm very appreciative of all our officers who dropped what they were doing several days in a row, whether it was providing mutual aid to other communities or coming into Detroit Lakes to deal with the problems and issues we were concerned about here. All in all, our goal is to help people exercise their First Amendment rights, and we respect differing opinions, and we want to treat everybody equally. There was a lot of community involvement on our demonstration, and that all worked out just fine. So I guess the other thing I'd say is I appreciate Mayor Frank and Kelsey Clem for coming in and working in the EOC and being involved in the discussions on how to best move through that situation and get it to end peacefully like it did.
Chief Todd, on behalf of myself and the council, will you please pass along to all the officers that we appreciate all the extra effort and work that they've put in the past few weeks, and pass that along to the guys.
I will, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Ron, anything else?
No, that'll be all this time, thank you.
Liquor and Gambling Control, Alderman Josephson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item A is the consideration to the request from the Detroit Lakes Eagles for a temporary expansion permit at 112 Holmes Street. Liquor and Gambling Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a temporary expansion permit for the Eagles Club at 112 Holmes Street. Discussion?
Basically, this is just cleaning up things from last week. They put in a request after our last meeting, and we're just adding them to the list. They're looking for some picnic tables and use of some sidewalk and right-of-way parking area. So that's what it is.
Okay, further discussion? Roll call vote. Sookie?
Aye.
Imholt?
Aye.
Wenner?
Aye.
Zeeman?
Aye.
Bly?
Aye.
Marks Erickson?
Aye.
Boki?
Aye.
Josephson?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Item B is the same thing, basically. It's consideration to the request from Main Street Cafe for a temporary expansion permit at 900 Washington Avenue. Liquor and Gambling Committee looked at this, and I recommend approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a temporary expansion permit for Main Street Cafe at 900 Washington Avenue. Discussion? Roll call vote. Imholt?
Aye.
Zeeman?
Aye.
Josephson?
Aye.
Bly?
Aye.
Marks Erickson?
Aye.
Winner?
Aye.
Boki?
Aye.
Sookie?
Aye.
The motion carries. Anything else, Dan?
Nothing further.
Anything from the Public Utilities Commission side, Madeline?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Will you take 11A, please? And we want to call on Kelsey to explain this item. Kelsey?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, you should have received a separate email with a document from Mead and Hunt, a memo from Mead and Hunt on amending our 2016 Airport Improvement Program grant. And the basis for that is there's work included in our 2016 grant that has to occur after the runway is completed. And the FAA is requesting that we close out our 2016 grant. So what they're recommending is we actually amend our 2016 grant by lowering it to take that work out of the 16 grant and move it into our 2020 grant application. And it's to the tune of $98,856 is the amendment to the grant agreement. From a financial perspective, this actually is a benefit to the airport because our 2020 grant certainly anticipate from what we're told from the FAA, it's going to be 100% grant. So that whole 100% of $98,000 will be covered through the FAA grant. But I do need council approval to amend that 2016 grant.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the amended 2016 Airport Improvement Program grant. Discussion on the motion? Roll call vote. Marks Erickson?
Aye.
Sookie?
Aye.
Wenner?
Aye.
Josephson?
Aye.
Boki?
Aye.
Imholt?
Yes.
Bly?
Aye.
Zeeman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 12A is consideration to a resolution extending the declaration of emergency. Kelsey, will you just briefly explain that?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, again, this is another extension of our kind of our peacetime emergency declaration. What we've been doing is extended from basically one council meeting to the next council meeting. And the recommendation here is to extend it to the July 14th city council meeting. It kind of corresponds with where we're at with the state's emergency declaration. And again, the city's emergency declaration doesn't impact businesses. We're not dictating what people can and can't do or what businesses can and can't be open, but it does provide us with some flexibility in staffing, our hours, and then accessing other resources if we need them.
Okay. So I would need a motion from the council to extend that emergency declaration.
I make a motion that we extend that emergency declaration to our July 14th city council meeting.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to extend the emergency declaration until July 14th, 2020. Discussion? Roll call vote. Zeeman.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Imholt.
Yes.
Sookie.
Aye.
Renner.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
The motion carries. I have not talked to all the folks on the library board. John Wood is going to have to come off the library board, so if anyone has someone in mind that would be maybe willing to serve on the library board, I would be open to suggestions. Linda Shell has agreed to serve another term on the library board, and I would recommend to the council that we reappoint Linda Shell.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Linda Shell to the library board. Discussion? Roll call vote. Sookie.
Aye.
Winner.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Bly.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Imholt.
Aye.
And I will have appointments for the rest of the library board sometime prior to,
Well, you can reappoint me if you want.
well, I didn't want to put you on the spot tonight, but if you're willing to, I would recommend to the council to reappoint Bruce Imholt to the library board.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Bruce to the library board. Discussion?
I think he's done a fine job. He should seek reappointment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would move that to a 6-year term.
Thanks for the little comment.
Okay, roll call vote. Bly.
Aye.
Josephson.
Aye.
Boki.
Aye.
Marks Erickson.
Aye.
Zeeman.
Aye.
Winner.
Aye.
Sookie. And
Aye.
Bruce, I assume you're gonna abstain, right?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you for your service, Bruce, we appreciate it.
And Mayor, just, could you make sure, I know you're good at this, John will get a letter from you thanking him.
Yes. Laura, you do that on, okay, thank you. The filing for city council positions opens up on July 28th, and it runs through August 11th, and the terms are listed there, including the vacant term in Ward 2. The joint governance meeting dates are listed for the rest of the year, and the 2020 city council dates are listed. Kelsey or staff, is there any additional items that need to be brought before the council this evening?
Mayor and council, I told Alderman Imholt that we aren't supposed to release this information till Wednesday, but it's probably close enough. It's almost Wednesday. We did get notified that the city of Detroit Lakes will be deemed a bronze status for a bike-friendly community. And to just give props to our intern who worked on that application was Barrett Ramstead Skoyles, who worked on it back in January and submitted it. So we're pleased to find out. And yes, technically they're going to make the announcement tomorrow, but by the time people watch this, it will be tomorrow. So it's a great job. It was a very lengthy application. I know city engineer John Pratt helped her with quite a bit of some technical information that was needed, and it's a pretty cool designation to receive.
Yeah, it's good news. Thank you, Kelsey. Anything else from the city staff? Bruce, you got anything else tonight?
July 7th, do we know if that's going to be in person with the schools or the governance meeting date?
Kelsey, anything on that, on the joint governance meeting on July 6th, is it?
7.
Carrie from the chamber just emailed out this afternoon that same question. So we'll get together and figure out what we're going to do.
I finally just comment, Your Honor, again, seconding what a lot of people have said. Appreciate police department, fire department, public works department, all our city staff for what they've done over the last month here with a lot of things going on in the city.
Thanks, Bruce. Jamie?
Yeah, the protesters also, I think, deserve some thanks. They came here, they were peaceful. It says a lot about them.
Thank you. Dan?
Nothing.
Ron?
Well, I think we owe a big thank you too for the hospitals and clinics, the doctors and nurses, all the professional staff everybody's been involved with this COVID, and it's been a lot of extra work for everybody, and just say a big thanks and kudos to them, along with the fire and the police and all the other people who've been helping out.
Okay, thanks. Matt?
Kelsey, did you want to comment on the brush pile? I know that'll be shut down for a weekend, I believe.
I'll let Sean.
Okay.
Yes, we will be shutting the compost site down June 13th, and the Detroit Lakes Fire Department will be burning that brush pile.
Okay, and it'll be shut down, I'm assuming till the 15th, 14th?
It'll be shut down all day Saturday. It'll open up back up Sunday the 14th.
Excellent, thank you.
That'll be a hell of a fire, huh? I mean, they burned that whole thing at one time?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go out there and watch.
Bring your weenies,
You might want to put that on YouTube or something.
long
Boy.
stick.
Natalie? How about the folks joining us on Zoom? Madeline?
Nothing except just to say Detroit Lakes is a great place to live and work. I think our community has risen to the occasion for the last 3 months.
Thank you. Dan?
I'm not even going to try to top that. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Did I miss anybody? The business of this council has come to a conclusion and the meeting is adjourned.